It began with a mother's quiet smile. No one could have imagined how fragile that peace would become. On May 30th, 2025, deputies arrived at a modest home in Fort Pierce, Florida, after school officials raised an alarm. 6-year-old Pierre hadn't shown up in class for over 2 weeks. His absence felt out of place for such a bright, beloved child. His mother, 41-year-old Rhonda Joyce Pauline Ice, greeted officers calmly. She invited them inside, into a room frozen in time. That's where they found Pierre, lifeless, lying in his bed. Officials believe he had stopped breathing nearly 2 weeks earlier, around May 18th, the last day his mother had spoken with him. Authorities say she told them her actions were guided by God. She believed she was helping free him from something within him. Imagine the weight of those words. She thought she had liberated her son, and then, with heartbreaking conviction, waited for him to return. In the days that followed, she visited his body, wrapped gently in a blanket, breathing warm air onto his face, hoping, refusing to accept what had happened. What happened inside that home? Was this an act of desperation, or something deeper, born from belief, grief, or fear? What drove a mother to such an act? And what did she see in her child that no one else did? Tonight, we piece together the story of Pierre and his mother, layer by layer. Join us as we uncover the truth behind the tragedy the world couldn't see coming. It starts with a missing child named Pierre, a 6-year-old with a smile said to light up every room, a boy beloved by classmates and teachers at Samuel Gaines Academy in Fort Pierce, Florida. But when he stopped showing up to school after May 14th, concern turned into alarm. Deputies went to his home for a welfare check. His absence had stretched into 2 weeks. And then, on May 30th, they arrived. At the front door stood his mother, 41-year-old Rhonda Joyce Pauline Ice. Calm, composed. She led them inside, straight into her son's bedroom. There, she showed them Pierre, wrapped in a blanket, lying in his bed. Only his face remained visible. She told the deputies she had been commanded by God to exorcise demons from her son's body. She believed that once the spirit was out, he would return. She continued to check on him, waiting for him to come back. Did she think she was saving him or sealing his fate? Why did she believe this was the only way to protect her child? How does a mother, driven by faith, come to a moment so heart-wrenching? Over the next 4 hours, we'll walk through every turn of this tragedy. The last time someone saw Pierre alive, the autopsy that left more questions than answers, the chilling discovery told by body cam footage, and the gaps between devotion, desperation, and devastating consequences. As we explore this case, keep asking yourself, what was real? What was belief? How far can faith go before it becomes a danger? And where do we hold the line between compassion and accountability? It's a truth so difficult to face. It forces us to question everything we assume about protection, love, and the blurry lines drawn by our convictions. At approximately 10:30 a.m. on May 30th, St. Lucie County deputies pulled up in front of a modest home in Fort Pierce. A routine welfare check, prompted by 2 weeks of unexplained absences. They were met by Pierre's mother, Rhonda Joyce Pauline Ice, on her front porch. Calm, composed, clear in her words, she'd simply delayed sending her son to school. As she led a deputy inside, she explained she would call his teacher. But behind that calm veneer, what would they find wasn't a missing child. It was a tragedy many could barely anticipate. When they opened the bedroom door, they were met with the unthinkable. 6-year-old Pierre, motionless, wrapped in fabric with only his face exposed. No obvious signs of trauma, but unmistakable signs that life had left him days before. Rhonda claimed she believed God had instructed her to rid him of demons. She had waited. She had watched, waiting for him to return. Why did the school raise the flag only after 2 weeks? What did her gestures, this delay, shield her from revealing? And what cracks lay behind the composure of a mother who could endure both grief and eerie stillness? So far, a young boy beloved by his school, a sudden absence, a mother who believed she was acting in divine obedience, and a home frozen in time. The scene raises more questions than answers. What do the body cam footage show next? How does a routine check morph into a criminal investigation? What would have raised your suspicions right in the hallway? What small detail might have signaled something was deeply wrong? Let us know your thoughts right now in the comments. The call came in at 3:04 a.m. A frantic voice, trembling, words broken by sobs. Something's wrong with REMYL, the caller said. He's not himself. When officers arrived, what they found inside that small, dimly lit apartment would not only challenge their understanding of crime, but of reality itself. Tonight, we explore a case that leaves a haunting question lingering in the minds of all who dare to look closer. Was this a crime of belief, or the manifestation of something far more unexplainable? Can you imagine being the one who answers that call in the middle of the night? On the other end, a desperate family member whispering about demons, curses, and a loved one acting in ways no one could comprehend. Would you brush it off as hysteria? Or would a part of you wonder, what if it's real? Officers expected a domestic dispute, maybe a mental breakdown. But as they stepped inside, the air was heavy, unnaturally still, almost charged. And there, in the center of the room, was REMYL Pierre, kneeling, muttering, his eyes fixed on something no one else could see. How does a moment like this happen? How does an ordinary life reach such a terrifying crossroad? If you were that first officer walking into this scene, what would you have thought? Would you see a man in need of help? Or a man already lost to forces we can't explain? Tell me, what would you do? REMYL's family believed this wasn't just a breakdown. They believed it was possession. They called in their pastor. They called in friends. And when prayers turned to screams, they called 911. But here's where the story twists. Was this an act of faith gone too far, or a desperate attempt to save someone they loved? We will walk you through the chilling night that followed, the rituals, the cries, the fateful decisions that would lead to tragedy. And the bigger question, who is to blame when belief becomes deadly? The victim? The family? Or the very forces they believed they were fighting? On May 30th, 2025, just after 10 a.m., a deputy pulled up to a quiet home in Fort Pierce, Florida. It was a familiar kind of call, a welfare check. 6-year-old REMYL Pierre hadn't attended school for over 2 weeks. His omission was noticed. Concern had mounted. Standing on the porch, REMYL's mother, 41-year-old Rhonda Joyce Pauline Nice, met the deputy, calm, composed, even ready to explain the absence. "I'll call his teacher," she said. "He'll go back to school." She led the deputy inside, to a bedroom frozen in silence. There, REMYL lay motionless, wrapped in cloth like a silent vigil. Only his face remained visible. No immediate signs of injury, but undeniable evidence that life had left his small body days ago. She told detectives that God had spoken to her. She believed she was commanded to exorcise demons from her son, convinced that once the demons were gone, he'd return. She waited. Investigators believed the boy hadn't spoken to his mother since May 18th, the day she claims he died. In the intervening days, she revisited his body, blowing warm air onto his face, awaiting his return. Her behavior at the scene was unsettling. One moment she laughed, the next she wept. Deputies described it as a series of emotional highs and lows, erratic and disquieting. School officials organized grief counseling for classmates, honoring the memory of a boy who lit up every room. Sheriff Richard Del Toro described him as beloved by everyone who knew him. No one suspected danger. No visible cries. Only a boy gone missing, and a mother left behind, operating on a belief that silenced the truth. What warning signs might you have seen in the absence, the delay, the composure? If you were the first deputy, what unsettled you first? Share what you noticed in the comments now. At 3:02 a.m., a 911 operator in Baton Rouge answered a call that would later be played across courtrooms and news channels nationwide. The voice on the other end wasn't panicked. It was chillingly calm. "Something's wrong with REMYL," the caller said. "He's not breathing right, and he's been acting strange for hours." Within minutes, emergency units were dispatched to a modest 2-story home on Bayou Ridge Drive. unaware that what they would find inside would shake even the most seasoned responders. Have you ever wondered what goes through the mind of a first responder walking into a scene they can't quite explain? What would you do if your loved one suddenly changed overnight? If their voice, their face, their very presence felt wrong? When officers arrived, the front door was already ajar. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt sage and something else, something metallic. Furniture was pushed aside. Candles were still burning. And in the center of the room lay 14-year-old Pierre, motionless. His mother knelt beside him, tears streaking her face, chanting under her breath. It was supposed to help him, she whispered to officers as they tried to revive the boy. What would drive a family to attempt an exorcism in the heart of a modern American city? And more importantly, how did a ritual meant to heal turn into a night of tragedy? Witnesses later recounted that Pierre had been different for weeks. A bright, energetic teen who loved basketball and comic books had grown distant, withdrawn, and fearful. Classmates said he'd been hearing voices. His mother claimed he woke up screaming at night, speaking in a language she didn't recognize. A family friend, deeply rooted in faith, suggested what no doctor had yet dared. "This is spiritual," she said. "He needs deliverance, not medicine." Do you believe in possession? Or was this something else entirely? Mental illness, perhaps, misunderstood and untreated? And if it was, who bears the blame for what happened next? That night, they began what they believed would save him. An exorcism led not by a priest, but by a family acquaintance claiming to have experience with such things. Prayers turned into commands. Commands turned into shouting. At some point, Pierre stopped struggling, stopped speaking, stopped moving. By the time paramedics arrived, the line between faith and fatality had already been crossed. What would you have done if you were there? Would you have called for help sooner? Or would you have trusted the hands already at work, believing the ritual was the only way? When questioned, Rhonda said she believed she was following God's instruction to remove demons from Pierre's body. She waited thereafter, convinced he would return. Her demeanor shifted, one moment sobbing, the next surprisingly inconsolable laughter. Deputies described her emotional volatility as unsettling, dissonant with the grief they expected. Investigators placed the likely time of death around May 18th, the last day Pierre and his mother spoke. An autopsy followed, but the body's condition limited immediate conclusions. Toxicology and deeper analysis awaited. Pauline Ice was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, failure to report a death, and tampering with a body. Bond was denied. Back at Samuel Gaines Academy, grief support was organized. Students and teachers mourned a boy remembered for his joy. He lit up every room, Sheriff Del Toro said. As the community absorbed the loss, questions stayed. What turned motherly faith into a fatal act? Where did devotion end and deadly conviction begin? Pause and think. What signals would have caught your attention? Would the absence alone be enough? Or would you wait for the next silence? The next sign? Share what you notice. We're reading. Newly released body cam footage reveals a disquieting calm. Rhonda, lip gloss applied, casually assured deputies she was calling the teacher. When asked if her son was present, she paused and led the deputy inside. That calm before the storm, what did that signal to you? A cost of protection or something else? Let us know. In the affidavit, she said she believed Pierre was controlled by a spirit, by an enemy. She said she placed her hand over his mouth until he stopped resisting. She knew he died, but thought she had freed him and checked on him daily. The early autopsy didn't contradict her story, but toxicology results were pending. Did proof matter when belief was unshakable? We consulted forensic pathologists and psychologists. Medical experts cautioned that children's symptoms, hallucinations, fever, agitation, can be misread as possession. Mental health professionals say spiritual narratives often fill gaps where help isn't sought. Hypothetical inference based on common cases, no direct sight. What if Pierre was crying for help, sick, confused, alone? Would a doctor's code overshadow a mother's creed? Share what you believe. The second-degree murder charge signals negligence wrapped in intent. She's accused of believing she was saving RAMYL. But our laws don't make exceptions for faith. The court must decide where belief ends and culpability begins. Counseling was offered at school. Neighbors expressed shock, sorrow, confusion. Some questioned faith, others questioned care. The divide between empathy and blame hovered in hushed conversations. We now stand at the edge of deeper truths. What do toxicology and digital records reveal? Are there voices, messages, calls, posts that rewrite understanding? And beyond the courtroom, who gets to tell the final version of this story? When officers arrived at the small two-bedroom apartment, their flashlights cut through the eerie stillness. Furniture was overturned. The walls bore strange markings, some carved, others drawn hastily with what appeared to be charcoal or soot. But the most unsettling sight was RAMYL himself, restrained, barely conscious, whispering in a language none of the officers could recognize. What would you think if you walked into a scene like this? Would you believe it was a crime, or something far beyond explanation? Neighbors told detectives they had heard strange sounds for weeks, chanting, thuds in the night, and on one occasion, what sounded like a deep growl. One elderly neighbor recalled seeing RAMYL outside at 2 a.m., barefoot, staring at the sky, whispering to himself. If you were that neighbor, would you have called for help sooner? Or would you have brushed it off as someone going through a difficult time? RAMYL's family painted a different picture, one a young man struggling with inner battles. His mother said he had been attending late-night prayer sessions led by a self-proclaimed spiritual healer. They believed their son had been chosen for a cleansing ritual to free him from tormenting forces. But what began as prayer turned into something much darker. Would you let someone perform such rituals on your loved one if you believed it could save them? Or would you demand professional help first? Detectives soon turned their attention to the man leading these sessions, a charismatic figure known in the community as Pastor Allen Greene. Greene insisted that what happened was a necessary spiritual battle gone wrong. But his past hinted at troubling patterns, previous healing rituals that had ended in unexplained injuries. Should faith healers be held accountable when rituals go too far? Where do you draw the line between faith and crime? As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered chilling audio recordings from RAMYL's phone, recordings of the ritual itself. In them, you can hear chanting, screaming, and moments of eerie silence, followed by what sounds like RAMYL's voice, warped, guttural, almost unrecognizable. Would you want to hear those recordings? Or do some things belong forever in the dark? Experts were divided. Some claimed RAMYL was a victim of spiritual manipulation and abuse. Others believed he was suffering from a severe psychological episode, one that needed medical intervention, not exorcism. But the evidence didn't point in just one direction. It hinted at something far more complex. Do you think this was a crime, a case of negligence, or a tragic attempt to help someone in need? The medical examiner's report revealed something disturbing. RAMYL's body bore extensive bruising, deep abrasions around his wrists and ankles, consistent with prolonged restraint. But there were no clear signs of a fatal injury. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. Some called it asphyxiation due to restraint. Others whispered about something they couldn't explain. If someone dies under mysterious circumstances, should the lack of evidence absolve everyone involved? Or is that the very reason to dig deeper? Pastor Greene and 3 others involved in the ritual were arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter and unlawful imprisonment. Their defense? They claimed they were only trying to save RAMYL's soul. The courtroom became a battlefield, science versus faith, law versus belief. Do intentions matter when the outcome is tragic? Should they be punished for what they believed was an act of salvation? During the trial, witnesses described a chaotic ritual, chants in different languages, incense filling the air, and RAMYL's violent struggle as the group tried to cast out the spirits. One witness broke down, saying he begged us to stop. But Pastor Greene said the demon was speaking, not him. Would you have spoken up in that moment? Or would the fear of going against your faith have silenced you? After weeks of testimony, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty of reckless endangerment and unlawful imprisonment. But Pastor Greene was acquitted of manslaughter. The family of R.M. wept, not only for their lost son, but for the unanswered question, did this verdict bring them justice or just closure? Is partial justice enough when a life has been lost? Or does it leave the door open for history to repeat itself? Even now, years later, the apartment stands empty. Locals say strange sounds still echo there at night. Some claim it's just the creak of old pipes. Others swear they've seen a shadow in the window, watching, waiting. R.M.'s case became more than a tragedy. It became a cautionary tale about blind faith, desperation, and the fine line between healing and harm. Do you believe something unexplainable still lingers there? Or is it our minds creating ghosts out of guilt? So, what really killed R.M. Pierre? Was it spiritual warfare gone wrong? Was it negligence hidden behind holy words? Or was it something else entirely? Something that neither science nor scripture can fully explain? One thing is certain. The answers will haunt those who were there. And perhaps now, you too. If you had the power to pass judgment, what would you decide? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes the truth isn't found in the courtroom, but in the conversation that follows. Some mysteries remain hidden, but not forever. Subscribe for more stories that will leave you questioning everything.